So Love Thy Neighbor, just to give a little bit of background, the whole point of Love Thy Neighbor is to help us all understand a little bit more how to communicate more effectively with people of a different ethnicity. But with that comes really just being able to be humble and asking simple questions. And that's my goal here, is to demonstrate by just asking simple questions how much we can actually learn from each other and just be enriched in just an amazing way, because I always think it's just amazing to learn about different people's perspectives and culture. But also having a panel here today, they may not always agree on everything, and that's totally fine. That's the point. Not everybody who identifies with the same ethnicity has the same perspective in terms of their culture. So we'll see how that all plays out today. I think what we're going to do is we will dive right in, and I'll ask our panelists to begin to introduce themselves. So Nitza, let's start with you.
Well, my name is Nitza Lewis, and thank you for this wonderful opportunity to share and show off our culture, right? But I was born in the Bronx, raised in New Jersey, and spent about 25 to 30 years in Charleston, South Carolina, in the South, and recently moved to McKinney, Texas, about 4 years ago.
Excellent.
I work for Southwest Transplant Alliance, and for 14 years, I've been a family care coordinator. So family is my love. Transitioned to the hospital and family services educator about a year ago. And so now I trained and educate and coach and from where I'm sitting at right now. So thank you again.
Thank you, Nitza.
Welcome.
Miriam, how about you?
Yes, so my name is Miriam Sparks. I was born and raised in the island. I just moved to Texas 4 years ago. My background, I'm a nurse. I work with Life Kids right now. I used to work with LifeLink back in the island. And again, well, like Nitza, I'm really happy to be here and share this time.
Awesome, thank you. And then we have Garamina.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. And I think this is a great opportunity. It's actually the first time that I have ever talked about the Puerto Rican culture, so I'm very excited. I am born and raised in Puerto Rico, and I did live in the mainland in Arizona and in the state of Florida many years ago, and decided to return. As you're gonna hear, Puerto Ricans are very close to their families, and that's one of the things that drove me to return. I've been working in the OPO industry for the last 10 years, all of those years in LifeLink of Puerto Rico, and I am the executive director here. And very blessed to have be able to be part of this family.
Awesome, thank you. Juan, how about you?
Really appreciate the invitation to be participating in this panel. My background is I am a critical care nurse. Has been in the organ transplant community for around 14 years in LifeLink Puerto Rico, born and raised here. Really enjoy having or spending time with my family, as Guillermina said. We Puerto Ricans really appreciate that.
Great, thank you so much, Juan. Really appreciate all of your time today to be here and be willing to share of yourselves, because it's somewhat personal as well. So let's start with terminology. What is appropriate terminology in terms of referencing somebody from Puerto Rico? Is there any particular terminology? Is it just referencing you as, do we just call you Puerto Ricans? What's the correct terminology?
I think Boricuas it's the name that really describes us. Everywhere you go, if there's a Puerto Rican, they are gonna say, "Hey, Boricua." So I think Boricua is something that describes, or it's a good terminology for Puerto Ricans.
For non-Puerto Rican to say that as well? So how did you say Puerto Ricans, or did you have another way of pronouncing that?
I think that I think it's very unlikely that a non-Puerto Rican will say it, because they will not know the background. Boricua is from the terminology of Boriquen, which was the name that the indigenous gave Puerto Rico. So that's how it came about. But I agree with Miriam that Boricua between us It's like a very friendly phrase to relate to one another. And I think it lowers the barriers of when you don't know someone and you say Boricua, it's like a instant click.
Right.
If someone that is not Puerto Rican says Boricua, and we, at least I don't mind, that just means that, hey, you know a little bit of our culture. So that's
Right.
always fun.
It is, yeah, it is like a term of endearment, but she's right. You know, when you hear it, I was like, oh, somebody else is out there that can relate to me. So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Puerto Rico? Am I saying?
Boricua. Boricua.
Boricua.
Boricua.
Wow. All right, great. Now, are there inappropriate ways that people reference Puerto Ricans? Are there inappropriate ways that people use reference Puerto Ricans that you would consider offensive? Where you feel like, no, don't call us that.
Well, I think I am the only one that haven't lived in the mainland. I only traveled like for vacations or for work. And I think the term Puerto Rican is perfectly fine with me. I don't mind someone tell me that. We are really proud from where we come from. You see, Miriam has the flag and the hats of Puerto Rico. Nisa has his flag also. We like that. Place it on our houses, on our place of work. The terminology, sometimes people think that here in the island, we live like we are not part of the US. So maybe you have seen some videos that people telling Puerto Ricans go back to your country because they are speaking Spanish or something like that. Or they think that we only live from welfare, something like that, that we don't give anything to the US. So many people don't know that the most condecorated war veteran of Vietnam was a Puerto Rican, Jorge Otero. They call it the Puerto Rican Rambo. So we have fought the wars. We gave them money. We pay taxes, and many people don't realize that. Maybe it's a lack of knowledge. People need to be educated and realize that we are part of the U.S.
So you feel very much excluded. Do you feel like you're not, that the US in general does not seem very inclusive of Puerto Rico?
As I told you, I have never lived in the mainland, but only what I have seen on the internet or on the television, maybe, but they are the less people, the minor people that speak that way.
Now, Nitsa and Miriam, as people living on mainland, is that your perception from having lived on mainland as well?
I think there's a lot unknown about the Puerto Rican culture here in the United States. I'm gonna say that where I work, we don't have as many Puerto Ricans as in other states here. So I feel like there's a lot, like I said, unknown about our culture, and like Spanish is our first language. Like not everybody in the island speak English. Like there's a lot that people just don't know, maybe because they don't think about it. But it's a lot of unknown about the Puerto Rican culture. And yes, we are definitely a territory of the United States, but our culture is very Latin. We have a Latin culture. We're Hispanics. So there's a lot of unknown, I'm gonna say.
All right. Nitsa, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, we're also very proud, very proud because we're Puerto Ricans, we're also Americans, and super proud of that. And I think that especially during Hurricane Maria, what Negron?
Oh,
Negroni.
Juan.
Negroni? Juan. Me gusta Juan mejor. I like Juan better. But but what like Juan was saying is you in the internet and in the news you would hear the refugees or they're not Americans, and it's like, well, yes we are, and it's like, yes we are, but those things were hurtful, because it's like we are Americans, and but I agree with him. It's like you're just hearing things like that, even though I was not in the mainland at the time I was here. You just that you want to shout out, we are Americans and we're proud and we do pay taxes, and so I that's what I wanted to share with you. That yeah. Going to school, growing up in a school where you were I went with Hungarian, Polish. You were known because of your native tongue, right? And then living in the South, where immediately I was called "you're brown." And so that was different for me, because to me that was the beginning of stripping who I was. And it felt uncomfortable, because I was like, no, I'm Puerto Rican. No, that's a color. That's brown. You're brown. I'm like, I'm actually Carmel, you talk about it. But it was like, no, I'm Puerto Rican. And so it was just different from the North and the South, mainland from the States. But going back to the school really quickly, I remember the teachers calling me Spick. And so we shared, what's
Wow.
not, and I didn't know what that was until later on growing up. I'm like, oh, that wasn't very nice, even though that's the end of Hispanic,
Wow.
but it was degrading, but as a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, 12-year-old going to Catholic school, and you're, again, Polish, Hungarian, and, Russian, and you were known by your native tongue, I didn't recognize why they were saying that, I didn't, it didn't feel good and it didn't sound nice, but I didn't exactly know the depth of it until I got older. And I'm glad I didn't, because I think I probably would have been one of those kids that get the merits. So, but yeah, that was offensive. Yeah.
Yeah, so I had never heard that term, obviously, maybe partially because I'm not from the US originally and I'm not as familiar with some of the terms, but so stick is supposed to be from the end of Hispanic, is that what you said?
Well, that's how I comprehended that it was, but I think that is just being it's like derogatory, it's like you're not even a full Hispanic, or you're just a fraction of, or so
Wow.
yeah.
So is Latino and Hispanic, are those both appropriate classifications for Puerto Ricans?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And if I may add, I think it's just we are not part of the common knowledge for the people in the nation. If it depends where you live. When I lived in Arizona, very rarely I found people that knew anything about Puerto Rico. I would be asked, where is my green card, or what was their currency, or where were we located? However, when I lived in Florida, everyone knew. So I think it depends, because we are really not part of that common knowledge. And I also think people don't realize that in Puerto Rico, we are a combination of three races: the Spanish, the Afro-American, the African, and the indigenous. So we are a mix. So that caramelo color that she refers, which is a beautiful color, that we say that that's a trigueño.
Exactamente.
In Spanish, which means that it's like a light coffee color. And if you go, if you come to Puerto Rico, you're going to see people that are fair skinned with blue eyes, especially if you go to the inner part of the island, like Bonito, Barranquitas. If you go to Loíza, Canóvanas, you're going to see more people that are from African descent. And then if you are in the metro area, you're just going to see a mix of everything. So, and we're very proud of that. I think that really has defined how our culture has developed through the last 500 years. And if I would say what defined us as individuals, at least for me, is very family oriented. And we always have food,
Mhm.
music, and gatherings.
Yes.
That's like we don't
Yeah.
need a birthday. We don't need to
Right.
celebrate. We just have each other, and that's enough.
Mhm.
So that actually brings me to the question then, do you believe that all Puerto Ricans have commonly shared values with which you're raised? Whether you're raised on mainland or on the islands, do you think that there are commonly shared values with which you're raised?
Totally agree. My mother raised me as her grandmother raised her, and so on. If you go to Puerto Ricans that live in the mainland, like Nitsa or Miriam, they are learning from their mothers and their fathers how to raise their kids, and they are sharing strong values with them. You have to go to church maybe on Sundays. You can't speak with older people are speaking because that's a
Yeah.
Mhm.
misconduct that you
The
have.
blessings to
Right.
elderly,
Exactly.
Exactly.
regardless if they're your grandparents or not. Everybody that is older, you need to say bless, bendición,
Yes,
ask for
right.
that blessing.
Or if someone dies, you have to go there and pay attention to them and help them if they need. So I think those values go from generation and generation going on.
I also think that the term family here, and I'm pretty sure most of the Puerto Ricans in the mainland is the same. It's different from what I think the general knowledge of what family is. Because if I know you and we just hit it off from the beginning, you're family to me.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
you're going to be invited to weddings and family gatherings, and I'm going to drop off food on your door, and if you're sick, I'm going to buy your medication, and I'm going to take care of your kids, and if you don't have enough invitations for a graduation, I'll be upset because I really want to be part of that. So our definition of family is very broad, and we're very passionate.
Oh my gosh.
Eh, so So I guess Nilsa has been the longest in the mainland, can better define if we're different or not, if we live in the mainland or in Puerto Rico. But
Right.
I can say that the family is really the core of everything that we do. Even the choices that we made in life, they're around family.
You're absolutely right, Guillermo. I said whether you're in the mainland or in Puerto Rico, there are several things that are universal with Puerto Ricans. The love of family, the respect of family bond,
Mhm.
the pride,
Mhm.
y la comida. The food. Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. My kids that were, of course,
Mhm.
born and raised in the States, even my grandchildren, they crave arroz con gandule, y alcapurria, y sopao, and so it doesn't matter. So when they go visit Huela in Isabela, that they gravitate to that. They rather have that than McDonald's. And so it's just something about that, and
Mhm.
maybe it's a combination. Maybe it's because it is family orientated and we eat together, and like I think I don't know if it was Guillermo or Miriam said that we don't need an event to celebrate. We celebrate everything. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
I love it. I get a sense of a real love for people
Yeah.
from the way you guys are describing it. And it's funny because every cultural live stream I do, everybody loves their food.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure ours is really good. I do want to also mention that this uh, broad um, awareness of what family means to us really transpires in the work that we all do in the
Absolutely.
organ and tissue donation spectrum, because everyone wants to be in the hospital and everyone wants to have an opinion and they expect to be heard.
Hmm.
And you find that you might have two FCCs because there's 30 people in the hospital and we need to make sure that we
Mm.
take care of all of them. And that because even if it's their neighbor, they are going to arrive to the hospital and they're going to say, yes, I'm their family. They're not going to say I'm their neighbor.
Right.
So I think sometimes it's difficult to manage, but we really embrace it because it comes from the right intention of being supportive.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow. Yeah. So who is the kind of the decision maker in the family? Ultimately, when a decision has to be made, is there an ultimate decision maker in the family, or does that depend from family to family?
Well,
Negroni, you are the FCC.
Right.
family care coordinator, Haiti, where maybe you have a case that you have the legal next of kin right in front of you, but he or she is not the decision maker. They, as Guillermina said before, they want to share their decision with others. Maybe it's a family member, maybe it's a neighbor, or maybe it's part of their church. Religious is a strong faction right here in the island and in the mainland of Puerto Ricans who lives there. So the decision is made by a whole, some almost all the time, not only by only one person.
And when you say church, is it predominantly Catholic or make both Protestant?
Catholic and then Protestant.
Okay. So
I think I would add to that, Haiti, that what Juan says, I totally agree. And then you will also come across, I think less and less now, but you still will come across families that they have such a high, I don't want to use the word respect because I think they respect everyone, but consideration to whoever is the decision maker, if it's the mom or the dad or the grandma or whoever has that responsibility, that they will say, even if they have a different opinion, whatever my grandma says, whatever my mom says, that's she called the shots. And then I think it's less common now, but still happens.
So, so is it more family dependent, or is it more like the oldest person in the family who tends to take the lead, or
I think it depends.
it depends?
I think it depends on
It's
some
very,
instances.
yeah, I will say it, Bara. Yeah.
Mhm.
No, sorry. No, I was gonna say it just is different between families. I will say that there's a lot of respect for the elderly. Like, let's see what my abuela wants to say, or let's see what she thinks, or how she feels about it. I think there's a lot of that. But I've seen in, for example, Mexican culture here that we have so many around us, and I feel like the grandma is the one who says there, like, this is what are we doing, or this is the decision that we're gonna make. And I feel like for us, it varies a little bit more than other cultures, I will say.
Yeah. And, this for my own education, abuela, is that the right term?
Mhm.
Abuela.
Abuela.
Grandmother.
That's grandma, I'm assuming.
Mhm.
Awesome, great. That's helpful to know, and one, that's exactly why I asked that question, because I know from a donation perspective, there is a hierarchy legally that we have to follow, and we're often focused on speaking to that person who is the legal decision maker, but like you said, that might not be the family's decision maker, right? And sometimes the family's decision maker might not even be blood, could be somebody external, could be somebody who's
Yeah.
guiding the family, right? Or somebody that they look up to. Yeah, great. So, are there times, and in what ways do you think someone might misunderstand a Puerto Rican?
Maybe. Well, in our field, in the organ donation community, we are present, or we have to give bad news. Your loved one has passed away, or something, or is currently in that duration that is going to pass away, and some Puerto Ricans may react in a different way. Back there in the 60s and 80s, there was something called the PR syndrome, Puerto Rican syndrome. Is when it's really a xenophobic term that was included in DSM and all that. But if you gave a bad news to someone that her loved one has passed away, they may harm themselves, they may destroy something near in the hospital, or they may start screaming.
Mm.
And if someone that doesn't belong to Puerto Rico or doesn't know that particular way to react to bad news, they may see that as something really, really, really difficult to deal with it. Uh,
Mhm.
Basically, it's a panic attack. You have to let them finish. Be careful that they don't harm themselves or harm others or the property. So I think in that way, in the hospital environment that we work, I don't know if Nita has seen this or Miriam have seen that in Texas. I know Guillermina and I have spoken about it because we had to deal with it.
Mhm.
So you still see that, and it's not a cultural thing, it's an actual kind of a panic attack and a reaction to a panic attack type of-
Exactly.
or reaction to the grief, I guess.
It's their way to deal with the grief.
Right.
Mhm.
I have seen that, and with families, and sometimes you get labeled they're difficult or this, but it's really stages of grief. One of the other things that sometimes as Puerto Ricans that you're misunderstood is about your passion. Sometimes they say, oh, she's screaming or she's assertive, but it's that, like Guillermina said, we're passionate. I don't know how many times I was called passionate in the last 4 years here in Texas. And so I had to learn how to tone down my passion. But you can't change who you are, and you shouldn't. But of course, I'm working with folks from different backgrounds and in different platforms. You have to learn how to, streamline that passion, but sometimes that's what's misunderstood, that, you can have two Puerto Ricans, like when my husband comes and visit and we're in Puerto Rico, he goes, oh my God, first time he's like, I thought you guys were arguing. No, estamos hablando duro. We're just talking loud, Paciente, passionate. So I totally, I think that's the one time that a lot of, I can say that a lot of Puerto Ricans get misunderstood because we're passionate, and almost like Italians, how they talk with their hands, but we're just passionate. And sometimes we talk really loud, but we're not upset. We're just what? Passion.
And if I could add to Nils, I totally agree with her perspective. I think that we also want to share our thoughts and our opinions all the time,
Yes.
even if we're not invited in the conversation.
Right.
And please don't get us wrong. It's not that we're nosy. It's just we just want to chat with you. And
yes, we're very chatty.
We will have an opinion about everything, even if we don't know what we're talking about. We will have an opinion, and that's just us. It's again this concept of relatedness to others. We just relate to people so easily that there's a saying here that there's never a stranger, because if you're in the line in the bank or in the supermarket, or now in the pandemic, no one is going anywhere, but when there used to be a line, you will never get bored, because you will talk to whoever was in front of you or behind you, and by the time you pay your bill, you were not strangers anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that can be misunderstood, especially if you travel from Puerto Rico to the mainland and you do that, people are going to look at you like, who are you?
What are you? What are you doing?
So, I think that could be another example.
Yeah. It sounds like a very sharing culture. And so consequently, like you said, the wanting to give of the opinions, everything, I kind of see that as a sharing thing too.
Right.
Your advice or insights. Yeah, that's awesome.
It's funny here when you go to a doctor's appointments, everyone is talking about their conditions and what they're there for and how long they have been visiting that physician and what medications he prescribed, what if it worked or not. So there's no HIPAA, nothing. Everyone is
Right.
just
It's just out there.
Sharing.
There was a question here from the audience. She's asking, in the Puerto Rican culture, is organ donation widely accepted, and how best can we respect the culture?
And as we were saying, Puerto Ricans like to help each other. And you have seen that in all the natural disasters that we have been through, hurricanes, earthquakes, and all that. And it's the same with organ donation. We have a really high authorization rate, not only because we are doing our job, it's also because they will help another Puerto Rican in need. And
Absolutely.
when we explain to them the UNOS list and all that, and they ask us if the organ is going to stay here in the island, and then we had to explain to them that maybe a Puerto Rican is living in the mainland, and maybe he need a transplant too. And we are like we want to help others, and
I
doing
think it can turn around a decision. The fact alone that we help, like knowing that you're going to help someone else, that's enough to say, you know what, forget about my doubts or anything. I want to donate. Let's do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Medium, that's right. I know Puerto Ricans, and I think both in the mainland and in the island, very giving, very giving, and without wanting anything in return. I think this is why, Juan would say that authorization rate is high. It's just, how can I help you? Even during and I keep on referring to, hurricane season, but they were helping other islands during Maria. And I just thought that was beautiful. They were helping Hades. They were, and I just, that made me what? Proud. But I just think we're just the people. I feel like a commercial, but I feel like we are people that want to just give, how can I help? So I totally agree with Juan and Miriam.
I think the one thing that will help to support them through this process
Yes.
is really give them the support. The Puerto Ricans, again, because we're so family oriented, losing someone, they are going to have a lot of emotions that are going to be out there.
Yes.
You're going to see it. And they don't want you to run away. They want you to
Embrace.
Support them and to whatever step of the process they are, for them to know and feel that they're being supported. And some families might take a couple of hours, and a family might say, we need to come back tomorrow and make a decision. And I think that's very common in many cultures. But I think the one aspect that will help a family care coordinator is to show them that you genuinely care for them in this situation, and that you're there, even if it's in silence, because sometimes that's what they need, just that sense that they are not alone. Because there can be a lot of people and still feel alone.
Right.
But if there's someone there that is taking care of them, and what do you need? Who do we need to contact? Have you eaten today? Do you need counseling from a pastor or a priest? Even before touching the subject of donation.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you said that, because in training, I always say just meet the families where they are and love them to the level where they can get. So, put donation. People are going to do the right thing. You have 98% of the people support donation. They want to help. However, just like Guillermina said, they're hurting. They're in pain. This is a stage of grief, and they can go from shock to upset to quiet. This is a time for us to go in there and interact. How can I help you? Yes. And even if donation is brought up, we're going to talk about that. You're going to do the right thing. But right now, how are you? Did you have something to eat? Look at the room. Hey, did grandma have something to eat? How can I, and that's what you do, you know, especially with the Hispanics, especially with Puerto Ricans. Just meet me where I am. And, sometimes just sitting there in silence, she's absolutely right. But I promise you that we'll give you that verbal. We'll say a yes if if you meet me where I am, I'll walk with you. The trust is super important, with families.
Yes.
And we do an activity for donor families. I'm pretty sure most of the procurement organizations do once a year. Unfortunately, this year is going to be virtual, but when we do that activity, we have a turnout of maybe 400, 450 people. And so many say, where is Juan? I need to see Juan. He talked to me when I lost my loved one, and I really want to see him again and say thank you. And where is Amaralis? I'm looking for Amaralis. So and I think that makes me feel so humble that they remember a year later this person, So when really that name has all the odds not to be remembered because so many things were happening at that time. So, but they already incorporated that person in that circle of trust that they have.
Yeah. So are there certain health or healthcare beliefs that are commonly shared among Puerto Rican people?
Well, we Puerto Ricans are, I think, the oldest one really believe what a physician say. Oh, the doctor told me that. Oh, because the doctor told me that, that's the truth.
Okay.
So if in the upper community, if you can find like a champion on your hospital that can speak with families in these difficult times and use the correct words, and is a physician and wears like a white gown, if someone sees a white gown, they are going to believe what they are saying. And Puerto Ricans really, really believe what physicians have to tell about their loved one. Even it's a brain dead diagnosis, even though it would be like a bad news, something about a disease, they will look up to the physician. Where is he? I need to speak with him. They will wait hours. They will not go to eat something, only waiting for that to speak with the physician. I think that's a common myth that we have to achieve before speaking with family who feel that need that they have.
So there's a lot of trust and respect for the physician and the physician's position.
Yes.
Exactly.
Have you found that needs on the mainland as well? And I guess Miriam, you have been in Texas for a while now as well. Have you experienced that with Puerto Ricans on mainland as well?
I think here it might be a little more shared. Like for example, if you have a chaplain that goes to the patient's room and talk to the family, not everybody asks for the doctor. Yes, everybody wants to know, obviously, and hear about the doctor. Yes, but I think here the responsibility is more shared. Like you have the nurses telling the patients, families, this is what is going on. This is the diagnosis. This is the plan for the day. Or I feel like in Puerto Rico that's like the doctor responsibility alone. Like we as nurses can only say up to certain point, and that's it. Everything else has to come from the doctor, and that element of trust is very important. And I think it's more on the physician over there. I think here it might be more shared. What do you think, Nixa?
No, I totally agree. And if especially with a Puerto Rican family, what you're not going to see is a Puerto Rican family not asking questions. So, the first person that comes in, whether they're respiratory or tech, they have scrubs on. Mira, ¿qué está pasando? What's going on? And so they will ask questions, whether maybe another family might be reserved, just waiting for that physician to come in. No,
Right.
no, we will ask questions. Everyone that steps in, who are you? What's going on? Can you tell me this? What is that? So that's what I've seen.
I would add to that if, let's say, the mom asked a question and then the other, a son arrives, he will ask the question again, even if he knows that the mom already asked.
Right.
And, you'll see them, I already asked her, okay, I know, but I want to know. So they will ask. And I think sometimes this could be another misinterpretation, that they're not understanding, or that they are difficult. And it's really, I don't think it's related to that. It's just that desire of I want to know, I want to support my mom, I want to make sure that she understood correctly, because she's very sad with what's happening. So I agree with Nilsa. We will ask a lot of questions. The staff here tells me all the time, you asked a lot of questions, Guillermina.
Right.
You
We're
see,
not shy
Juan is
about
laughing.
No comments.
So
No comments.
are there certain barriers when it comes to healthcare that, it sounds to me like overall that from both sides that there is quite a bit of trust towards the healthcare professionals. Are there any barriers when it comes to the healthcare environment, or not really?
I think the only barrier, and correct me if or maybe add, but I think the only barriers that that there may be, especially in the mainland, is that sometimes Puerto Ricans may feel like they're not, the physicians or the staff may not totally tell them everything. Sometimes they may feel like you're stereotyping me. Sometimes they may feel like, well, are you documented? And so, and you may get that feeling from a staff or a nurse. And so that's where that, you sit up a little bit straight, and I'm like, you ask the question with confidence. But if it's a barrier, I think it would be something like that, only because I have seen it with families, especially working in the South for 30 years. Well, the last 10 years in the South, I've seen that a little bit.
I also think lack of time is a barrier, because Puerto Rican's family will demand time.
Yes.
Even if, let's say, a physician met with you yesterday, they want to talk to you again today. So we, of course, physicians, this is not their only patient, but they feel this is his only patient.
Right.
So, we feel our loved one is the only patient. So I think sometimes the lack of time can be a barrier. No, this is no one's fault, but we need time. We need time to process. We need time to understand what's happening, to make decisions, because that's the other thing. I don't think in general Puerto Ricans are prone to make expeditions in a fast track fashion.
Yeah, it's funny because we don't like to wait, but you will wait for me,
Right?
Yeah.
So are there commonly held beliefs about death among Puerto Rican people? Is there anything that kind of brings meaning in death to Puerto Ricans? I think you shared a little bit when it comes to donation. It helps to know that you're helping somebody else because of the sharing kind of culture. Is there anything else you want to add to that?
Well, regarding death, and as I told you before, we are really a religious country, and we will wait for a miracle. We will pray. We will ask God to hear us and maybe save my loved one. As Guillermina said before, it's everything about timing. If someone is praying for a miracle, that's not the time to speak about organ donation.
Absolutely.
You have to wait. You have to give space from the faith to work on. That's what I tell my families. Let the faith work on. Go speak with your priest or with your preacher, or maybe bring a nun or something like that. But in the end, you can't tell God what to do. God is going to do His will. And if His will is to take our loved one with Him, He's going to do that. So because a miracle can occur, it can occur at the hospital, it can occur in the funeral home. Doesn't matter. They are not frontiers from the help of God. But in our scenario, we need people are going to die, and we have to give them space to the faith to work on.
Now, what happens if you don't have much time? Let's say the patient, the potential donor is unstable, and there's concerns about time limit. How do you navigate that with the family? Do you feel like there's not that much time that you can give them?
We need support from the hospital staff because a patient cannot be on event after it's been declared brain dead. It can be like 1, 2, 3 days maybe, but we need the hospital staff to support us, to sit with the family, to explain to them again and again the diagnosis. Maybe the first time they didn't hear well, so we had because they were grieving. We had to take the time to explain it again and again, and in the end, almost all the time they will understand that their loved one is gone and we can proceed. But they are families that we're not gonna get it. They will still believe in a miracle, and the hospital is going to remove their loved one from the event finally.
So consistent communication from the healthcare team is important, but then, like you said, ultimately the family will drive that decision. It reminded me, I actually had a case. It was not a Puerto Rican family, it was a family from Mexico, but they were praying for miracle. And we did end up approaching about donation, and they immediately said yes. And they said, this is the miracle we've been praying for. So, you know, sometimes it can go a different direction too with that, what they're praying for, because quite often they're looking for hope, right? Some answer to why is this happening.
Right, some meaning behind it.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And I think that it's very powerful in our culture. Everything has to have a meaning. And we always say everything happens for something. You know, there's a reason that this happened and there has to be purpose. So they see donation as, you know, this is not a lost life. You know, this was the purpose for this individual that ended up in this situation. He's going to be a hero now because he saved someone. So that's also very powerful in our culture. Even when something bad happens, they will say, well, you know, there has to be a reason for this to happen.
Right.
So I do have another question from the audience. Do you find that having the MD do the brain death exam with the family present helps them to understand the diagnosis?
Totally agree.
Me too.
If they can see the exam, it happened to me yesterday. We were in one of our main hospitals, and a family was asking to be there during the exam. They trust the physician. If they say that's the diagnosis, they will trust him. But it is better if they can participate, if they can see, if they can touch, they can place their hands on their chest when they are doing the apnea test to see if she or he is breathing by her own. That will help to understand the
And that's again time that the physician is spending with this family. Is time, like Guillermina said earlier, it's time that health professional is taking to explain what brain death is to this family. And that also can turn a decision from a person that is very angry, that is not understanding what's going on, to, you know, you have that physician that take the time to come to the bedside and do, you know, all the exam, the neurological exam that you have to do to pronounce a patient brain dead. So I feel like it's part of that time that we need to understand and
Yeah, that's a really good point. It would work in the physician's favor to do that, because it's, like you said, an expression of the amount of time they're pouring into the family, even though it's part of what they need to get done anyway. And just allowing the family to be there helps to just make the family feel like the physician gave them more time. That's a really good point.
Yes.
Yeah. Excellent. All right, so me as a non-Puerto Rican, are there certain principles that I should be aware of when I'm interacting with somebody from Puerto Rico? Like do's and don'ts.
Well, family and religious beliefs, I think those are really the main principles that you have to attach to them. And don't, as Nitsa said, don't stereotype. If you see a Puerto Rican speaking loud or very passionate about their grief, crying in a uncontrolled way, just wait.
Mhm.
Those feelings are going to pass and they will come down. Call her by their name, Maria or Luisa. I'm here with you.
Mhm.
No by Mrs. Roman or no by bed 105, something like that. Just call them by their name with respect and empathy.
Absolutely. I think, and I totally agree with you, Juan. And another thing that um, uh, us Puerto Ricans like to do, we greet with kisses. You know, we kiss here, we kiss there, and or we hug. You know, we're just, um,
Yeah.
very, we're very loving people, but not everyone, especially now with COVID. So that's very difficult for the Puerto Ricans. You know, even when I went home, but maybe a couple of months ago, bendición and you know, with the respect, the social distancing. So I know that's very hard for all of us because we're huggers and we do like to greet with the, kiss on the cheeks regardless. So sometimes that could be misunderstood if you don't understand, again, the culture, that we're not being, it's not that we're crossing the line, or trying to get closer. I certainly don't want to smell your neck or anything like that. It's just a greeting, it's how we greet, So do you guys agree or disagree?
Even if you're a stranger, yes,
Yes.
that sense of personal space we don't have, because
What is that? COVID is really hurting us in so many ways,
It is.
Because like,
it has definitely, and I agree with Nilsa. It's not that we want to invade your personal space.
No.
It's just we just want to be close to everyone. And but we will greet you with a hug or a kiss, even if we don't know you.
Right.
If this was face to face and Haiti present Nilsa, I would still hug her and kiss her just like
Absolutely.
I've known her forever.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I will say, Boricua, I'm so, where are you from? And when was the last time that you went there? Where did you go? What did you eat?
Right.
And I'm going to give you my phone. So the next time you go, you please call me and I'll take you this and there.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Anything I could be doing potentially if I went to Puerto Rico that could be perceived as offensive, as if I didn't realize, is this something that I have to be careful about?
I would say not acknowledging the culture, because we are so proud of where we come from and our heritage. And disregarding that, I think it could be interpreted that way, even if not the intention. I'm sorry, Juan, I know you wanted to say something.
No, that's okay. If you meet with a Puerto Rican family or you come here to the island, I hope you can come someday. If you say no to a cup of coffee or if you say no,
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yes.
it can be interpreted
Or
as
to food
offensive.
in general.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
or,
Yes.
or you are meeting with a family and they told you, please sit here. And now with the pandemic, we have to be careful on all that. But if they told you, please sit here close to them, and you say no for some reason, maybe that will be interpreted as offensive to us.
there's no such thing as no thank you. But I just ate. Okay, siéntate. Sit down. You're gonna eat. Oh, do you want aguacate? Oh, you don't like it? Here's two. So it is offensive if you can go to four or five different homes. They will give you galletitas, little crackers con queso with cheese, coffee, juguito, juice, and you better say yes or say thank you.
And
You
it
will
doesn't
gain 10
matter.
pounds in a day, but you don't say no.
It
I'm
doesn't
sorry.
matter how hot and humid is it outside. We
You
drink
don't
hot
complain.
coffee.
Yes, that's
That's
right.
our
Yes.
thing.
Yes.
I think another example is if you are with a family and they tell you that 15 people are coming, and you say no, the hospital only allows 4. I'm using this example regardless of the current situation that we're working on.
Right.
I think my recommendation is to get a bigger room because they will be offended if you say no.
Mhm.
They will take it as, you're not giving us the space and the time that we need. And everyone, well, why do you need 15 people? Well, because I have 5 brothers and their wives and their kids, and then my mom and my dad and my neighbor, that she's their aunt, even though they're not related, but she has been taking care of them since they were little. So I think that will be something that could be easily interpret as offensive.
Mhm.
Sure.
Yeah, I can see that. So I want to go back briefly a little bit to the body language piece. So would it be correct to assume that it's important to make eye contact and to be comfortable with touching and proximity?
And shake hands. You have to shake hands with everyone in the room.
Yeah.
If you shake hands with, you miss someone, they are going to look you. Why do you do that?
Mhm.
No, say hello to everyone. As Guillermina was telling, don't use the word no. Just tell them, I will try. I will help you with that. I will be in contact with the nurse supervisor or the security in charge to try to work with that. Doesn't mean that it's going to happen, but
Right.
you see your truly intention to help them.
So make sure that your intention translates that you want to do everything you can to help. So even if you already know the answer is going to be no, you're relating, I will do my best.
It's not maybe in our hands to allow them to go to the room, but we can try that. That's the least thing we can do. There are policies we have to follow, security things that we have to need to be done, but at least we can try.
Mhm. That's good to know.
I
So-
think something else that if you are going to have a meeting with a Puerto Rican family, pay close attention to their body language because we're very passionate, and you will know looking at us, we talk a lot with our hands. So you will know if we are understanding or not, or accepting. If they don't look at you, if they turn away, if they raise their brow, if they seem distracted, you will know in their body language. So be observant and not be fixed to a script, because you need to be flexible for you to modify it depending on how the body language is telling you, because they could be saying yes, but with the rest of their expressions are saying, this is not working for us. So
how
I
do
don't
you
know, Nilsa, if you want to add anything there.
No, I totally agree with you. We're very on the flip side of the recipient side. If I was a family and I was in the hospital, if we're in that scenario, we're very transparent. We are very transparent. What you see is what you get. So there's no such thing as poker face. If I don't get it, I don't get it. If I do, I do. On the other side, working with physicians as a Puerto Rican coordinator here, and knowing the importance of hugging, what I have done is when I go meet a doctor, and this is before COVID, I would we're going to elbow, so that's how I connect with the physicians, instead of shaking hands. I've always just, elbow. And so get him to, as we build um, our relationship, or we foster relationships with our hospital partners. That's how I built. So I start with as my Puerto Rican building. So we start with the elbow, and then, I get into the very professional, mode. So just there, I have to have that.
So going back to what you were saying, Guillermina, with if they are nodding, but clearly their body language is telling
Right.
you no, how do you navigate that? How is it best to just say, it seems to me like you're not comfortable, or is there something you're not understanding? Is it best to just put it out there, or how do you best navigate that? Do you ask them questions? How are you feeling? What's the best way of navigating that?
I think all families are different. So that's why, because you have invested the time, by now you know what will be the best route. Some families you can be upfront, but I think the one thing, and I think Juan is a better, has better experience than me to say this, but I think listening. I would then just redirect the conversation of, tell me who was Maria. Tell
Okay.
me tell me about her life, and then forget what you had scripted in your mind, and take them to a place where they're comfortable and being engaged, and redirect that conversation on what is important, which is their loved one. I don't know, Juan, if you have a different opinion.
Yes, totally agree, Guillermina. Sometimes it helps to take a time out. If you've seen them that they are not getting when you want them to get, we can stop the conversation. Let's go drink a cup of coffee. Let's meet again at certain time. Do you want to call someone that participate in our conversation? Because if Puerto Rican culture, it may help the most people in the room, because if you have like only two people and one of them say no, it's really difficult to change the direction of the course of the authorization. But if you have like five, maybe four, you can direct them and make other people talk, maybe between each other, and open the one that is nodding and is maybe don't pay really attention, that is working with his cell phone and
Hmm.
haven't seen you in your eyes, and call them by their name. Hey, Luis, you understand what I'm saying right now? There is a question that you may want to ask me, and we can proceed and continue with our conversation. Just take a time out and call them by their name and redirect the conversation as Guillermina told.
Can I add something to that? Um, uh, and when you walk into that, you're absolutely right, Juan. When you walk into that family's room, whether there's one, two, or three, or four, or five, and sometimes they may be stoic, quiet and not sharing. One of the things that normally works for me is beginning to ask questions after you do your initial introduction, and I will try to focus my attention on the patient. And I would ask, tell me how we connected. Are you mom? Are you wife? If they're married, I'm like, eventually I'll ask, was it love at first sight? Because if I get them talking about their loved one, then they start opening up, and I'm going to sit right here. I don't ask permission, as you can see, right? So I'm like, oh, me voy a sentar aquí. I'm going to sit right here next to you. Tell me, when was the last time you guys talked? Or, I understand that this happened. Help me understand what you're thinking, what your thoughts, where were you? Just ask questions. But especially if you connect the potential donor, to that family, and they have beautiful hair, or I see that, if it's a sibling, I see that you look alike. If it's somebody that's had an accident, show me pictures. I want you to tell me about the person. Sometimes that will help them relax. We're not talking about donation. We're not talking about anything. We're just talking about your loved one, And then, like you said, Juan, tell me his name. ¿Cómo se llama? Did he have a nickname? I normally will ask him. So what do you call him? And then I will continue to talk. So Bobby, you know, and then I would go on and on. Was he a jokester? Did he like to cook? So I just really try to bring that donor to life in that loved one in that room as much as possible before talking about the traumatic brain injury and what happened.
Yeah, I think those are very important points of connecting the family and the humanity back into the situation.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
And again, it goes back to that theme of sharing, right? Sharing about that person.
Right.
Passion, yeah. So,
If you can make them smile, you have gained them.
mhm.
You have it on your side. It's not that you're
Yes.
jokes or something like that, but find something that make
In
them
common.
exactly
We can
in common,
connect.
that maybe remember of the loved one that make them smile.
Yes.
That will help a lot.
Absolutely.
Excellent. So before I come to my last question, I have one other question to ask you. Is there any question you wish I had asked you?
That sounds like that question in the Dre. Do you have any questions about the questions?
No questions about the
Right?
question you wish I had asked you.
um,
Not for me.
Yeah.
Okay, so then my last question, and I'd like to hear this from each of you. Tell me one thing that you love about the commonly shared cultural practices and values of the Puerto Rican people. So what's your favorite thing or the one thing that you love? And I'll start with Miriam.
I think I love the pride that Puerto Ricans feels about being Puerto Ricans. Everywhere you go, anywhere you go, if there's a Puerto Rican, there's pride. So that's one thing. And something else, it's the resilience. Puerto Rican people is very resilient. Everywhere you go, they teach us literally after Maria, after the earthquake, after everything. I just recently went back to my island, and it's just beautiful. And people, it's like it came back to life after Maria. And I feel like pride to be Puerto Rican and being resilient are the two main things that I love about being Puerto Rican and about Puerto Ricans in general.
Awesome. Thank you, Miriam. How about you, Gavin? Yeah. Yeah, Mia. Well, I know we get it.
You know, I love the fact that we love people.
Mhm.
You know, I really adore that because at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter the job that you have, even though I adore my job, or the cars that you have, or how big is your house, or if you have the latest fashion. It's really for me, what is important is who is around you. And I love the fact that we love people, and I respect that.
That's awesome. Thank you. Juan, how about you?
So for me, it's the importance that we gave to our family. Family is all for us. We change our jobs to be with them. We adjust our needs to be with them. And as Guillermina told us before, even though it's not blood share, it's maybe a neighbor can be your family. Maybe a coworker can become your family. So it really expands before more than bloodlines. So families all from Puerto Ricans in the mainland. I have a sister that lives there, and we try to communicate as soon every time that we can. But we really miss each other. We really need us. So family is all for us.
Beautiful. Thank you. Nitsa.
What I love about the Puerto Ricans and being Puerto Rican is the love of God. So whether they're Protestant, Roman Catholic, Pentecostal, they have a strong faith. And I think this is why they were able to be resilient. And from the little ones to the older ones, if you ever are on a flight to Puerto Rico, they this and so it's just I love and totally respect how they honor God in whatever way. They just have this strong faith, and when something happens, they're like, God willing, God will, he's with us, and it doesn't matter if they go to church every day, it doesn't matter, but I love that about the Puerto Ricans, so that's my favorite.
That's awesome.
Nitsa, if I might add to Nitsa's comment, I totally agree. My 5-year-old, we pray every night, and
Yes.
the other day, my husband smokes, and she told, you know what? God is watching you. You have to stop doing that. He doesn't like that. God is watching you. So, Nilsa is totally right.
Out of the lips of faith. Well, I really, really appreciate all of your times. I appreciate the audience participating and asking some great questions and adding some great comments. Thank you, everyone, for your time. And thank you especially to the panel, to Miriam, Guillermina, and Juan and Nitsa for your time and for sharing of your culture. I feel like we could go on for a long time. But what my biggest plan is that I get to come and visit Puerto Rico sometime soon. But I guess I'll have to wait till this is all over before I can travel again. But thank you so much. I really appreciate all of your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.